When was the last time you were surprised? Now, I recognize it might have been about 15 minutes ago when you saw me in this very room. Now, if you're a regular parishioner, you may recognize me. If you're not a regular parishioner, then you won't. But that's a surprise. Patty and I are here. We are on a bit of a sabbatical, but we had to come home for Christmas, so that's why you are seeing my face. Deacon David, by the way, if maybe you don't know who I am, which so far this makes no sense to you whatsoever. But when's the last time you were surprised? For me, it was probably about 24 hours ago when I woke up to a foot of snow. Anyone with me on that one? I knew it was going to snow, but I didn't expect, that much. We're in our final days of Advent, and Christmas is right around the corner. And throughout Advent, we have been in this 4-week preaching series called Divine Expectations. And we have been talking about small groups, which is part of the 2025 Diocesan Pastoral Plan that the Archbishop Dunn, has asked us to take on. In week 1, Father James spoke about our desire to be a parish who cares. And he asked us a very honest question: how are we doing with our caring? We want to move the needle. Wherever it is, we want to move from left to right, of course. And the old model of the super priest he talked about has been broken and busted for a long time. That should not be a surprise to anyone. We can't expect the priest to do all of the caring within a parish. Week number 2, we heard the words of John the Baptist: prepare the way of the Lord. What does God ask of us or expect of us as a parish? How do we live and proclaim our call that God has asked us to carry? And how do we live out the gospel as a parish community? And last week, Father James, as a parish, we can look, last week, Father James, see, I'm rusty at this, you can tell. Father James looked at the gospel from last week, and the question that people were coming up to John the Baptist saying, what should we do? What should we do? Faith ought to lead us into action, and our mission statement gives us a clue as to what we should do. We should make joyful disciples who live out their call. And here we are in our final week of Advent, just a few days before Christmas. In our gospel, Mary goes to her cousin Elizabeth in this beautiful exchange known as the Visitation. Do you think Elizabeth was surprised by Mary's greeting? On hearing Mary's voice, the child leapt in Elizabeth's womb, and she was filled with the Holy Spirit. She exclaims in a loud voice, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." At that very moment, the Holy Spirit filled Elizabeth with the knowledge that her cousin was to fulfill a very special role in salvation history. She addresses Mary as the mother of my Lord. And Mary was very surprised by Elizabeth's expression, not expecting it. The Holy Spirit filled Elizabeth. Now here we have Mary, a very young woman, pregnant. Elizabeth, a woman of considerable age, a woman who was previously unable to conceive a child, also pregnant. Two very unexpected and perhaps surprised pregnancies. Both of them also had to be surprised about how God was going to use them in this particular way. Luke's gospel is the only biblical account of this exchange, this story. And I love this image. The intimate exchange between Mary and Elizabeth, how they love each other and have such humility and grace. such vulnerability, tenderness, and love for one another. And also such faith and obedience to God. If you don't pray the rosary, the visitation is the second mystery of the joyful mysteries. Each decade has what is called the fruit of the decade. What is the fruit of the visitation? Does anybody know? Love of neighbor, correct. The fruit of the mystery is a love of neighbor. Pope Paul VI. See, I am rusty. When we think about Mary and her visit to Elizabeth, where would you say that is on the caring scale? I'd say it's a 10. You're right. It's a 10. You think about a pregnant woman, a young pregnant woman, who journeys many miles and many days to go to her cousin, Elizabeth, and then she spends several months. We're told it's 3 months. Her main attention to Elizabeth is first and foremost. She puts everything as far as her own concern aside and goes and spends a long time looking after her cousin. I would suggest to you on the caring scale, that's right up there. It's got to be a 10. But Pope Paul VI says that because Mary loved Christ so much, our dear mother fulfilled perfectly that second commandment, which must be the norm of all human relations, the love of neighbor. Mary places her own needs secondary to the needs of Elizabeth. Our Advent preaching series to communicate the initiative of small groups in the parish will begin next year. If small groups is a new concept to you, I want to offer my experience over the last 10 years with small groups. Through COVID, my wife Patty and I were part of a small group of 7 people who met online once a week. So this gathering was helpful to all of us, particularly to be able to deal with what we all experienced through COVID, dealing with the isolation and the challenges 24/7. This gathering was helpful to deal with all of that as we supported and prayed with one another and listened to each other's concerns and frustrations and experiences of what COVID, how it impacted them personally. And we grew very close as a group. And prior to COVID, our family, our kids and Patty and myself, were part of a larger group of 30 people who met every other week. And we enjoyed getting to know other parishioners socially, which is sometimes a challenge in a large parish. But socially, it was wonderful. We also prayed together. We spent time together. We supported one another and helped each other grow in our own faith. And currently, Patty is part of a small group that still gets together today. It was formed originally in COVID, but they get together 4 out of 5 mornings a week on Zoom, and they pray together for 40 minutes. Very simple. And that group of women support and nurture and love each other. These are 3 very different small groups, but they all have the same objective: to help each other grow in faith and form and strengthen relationships and care for one another. If you're thinking groups really aren't my thing, I want to offer you a suggestion. I mean, if you work, if you go to school, if you belong in a neighborhood, if you have a sport or a hobby, you're already part of a small group because you are part of a sports group or a neighborhood group or a work group or a school group. Our lives are full of small groups. In fact, I think it's impossible not to belong to a small group. So as we close out this preaching series, here's the ask, and it's very simple. In the new year, and email will be sent out to all parishioners. It will provide more information and invite everyone to join a small group. If you're not connected to the parish electronically, if you don't receive our weekly updates, if we don't have your email, at the end of Mass, station that's all of the exits, there'll be a person with a clipboard. Provide them with your email, so we can contact you and give you this information in the new year. Simple enough? Simple enough? Over the holidays, think about joining a small group. Think about how a small group can help you meet new people. How it can help you learn and grow in your faith, and help you to love God by loving neighbor. Can being part of a small group, do all of these things? You might just be surprised.